Well, good evening once again. Day 17 of the Biden administration. In 4 days' time, Donald Trump will once again be defending himself at an impeachment trial in the U.S. Senate. He was acquitted of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress in his first go-round exactly 1 year ago today. His place in the history book of impeachment was already secure, but this solidifies his unique low point in American history. Now Trump's charged with incitement to insurrection stemming from the riot on Capitol Hill a month ago. Tonight, in an interview with CBS News, the president is speaking out about Trump's behavior, whether he should get intelligence briefings, whether he would vote to impeach if he were still in the Senate.
I ran like hell to defeat him because I thought he was unfit to be president. I've watched what everybody else watched, what happened when that crew invaded the United States Congress. But I'm not in the Senate now. I'll let the Senate make that decision.
Should former President Trump still receive intelligence briefings?
I think not.
Why not?
Because of his erratic behavior, unrelated to the insurrection.
What's your worst fear if he continues to get these intelligence briefings?
I'd rather not speculate out loud. I just think that there is no need for him to have that intelligence briefing. What value is giving him an intelligence briefing? What impact does he have at all, other than the fact he might slip and say something?
Tonight, the latest reporting from the New York Times says Trump's defense lawyers, Bruce Castor and David Schoen, have, quote, worked feverishly on Friday to get up to speed on the case and prepare for the trial. It adds that they had yet to learn anything about how the trial would operate, including its schedule, how much time the defense would have to present its arguments, and the rules for entering evidence. I'm in shock we're starting Tuesday and we have no agreement for how any resolutions will be put forward, Mr. Schoen said in a telephone interview. We have no rules, no agenda, no time frame. There is no possible way this is consistent with due process. Politico reports that Trump allies are concerned about the public relations blowback from the trial as Democrats lay out the events of January 6 methodically. Quote, some of his most ardent supporters fear the trial could further damage his reputation. The Democrats have a very emotional and compelling case, said former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon. They're going to try to convict him in the eyes of the American people and smear him forever. Though, of course, that ship may have already sailed. As all of this unfolds, Joe Biden today took his first flight as president on Air Force One. In this case, the smaller version, the 757 version of the aircraft for the short flight over to Delaware. President is refusing to back down amid opposition from Republicans who want to shrink his nearly $2 trillion relief bill. He said his strongest message yet that he's willing to move forward on his economic relief plan without Republican support. Both the Senate and House have signed off on an initial version of a budget plan that would begin turning Biden's proposal into real legislation. Speaker Pelosi and the House Democrats met with Biden today. She says she wants the House to pass its version of Biden's plan within a couple of weeks. The economy remains anemic after nearly a year of this pandemic. Just 49,000 jobs were added to our economy in January. We're still down 10 million, give or take, something Biden took note of today.
It's very clear our economy is still in trouble. I'm going to act fast. I'd like to be doing it with the support of Republicans. If I have to choose between getting help right now to Americans who are hurting so badly and getting bogged down in a lengthy negotiation, or compromising on a bill that's up to the crisis, that's an easy choice. What Republicans have proposed is either to do nothing or not enough.
The president said today he won't budge on the idea of $1,400 stimulus checks, but tonight he signaled his proposal to raise the minimum wage to $15 may not, in fact, be part of the final bill.
I'm prepared as President of the United States on a separate negotiation on minimum wage.
But that may not be in your American Rescue Plan.
No, I put it in, but I don't think it's going to survive.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.